He became well known for his blue eyes. He became famous because of his films. He was a very different person at home, though, and now his daughter is speaking up about what actually transpired behind closed doors. Their family nearly fell apart because to the drinking. His guilt following his son's overdose. And the startling admission he made while near death. This tale will alter your entire perspective. In Cleveland Heights, Ohio, on January 26, 1925, Paul Newman was born. He came from a multicultural and multi-traditional family. His father, Arthur Newman, was Jewish and the son of immigrants from Poland and Hungary. Teresa was his mother, and she was Slovak. His parents had a prosperous sporting goods business in Cleveland's upscale Shaker Heights neighborhood. The family had money. Paul was raised in a comfortable environment. However, he still encountered prejudice. The majority of Shaker Heights was Christian, and anti-Semitism was widespread at the period. Paul was a superb student and athlete in high school, but because of his father's Jewish heritage, he was not allowed to join a fraternity. It was an experience that stuck with him and probably shaped his later opinions on justice and equality. In the meantime, he had a creatively active childhood. He made his stage debut in the school play Robin Hood at the age of 7. He was inspired by the minor role. Later on, he became a member of the children's theater program at the Cleveland Playhouse, where he performed in productions such as St. George and the Dragon. Although he didn't yet consider acting to be a career, he did like it. After graduating from Shaker Heights High School, he planned to study economics when he enrolled at Kenyon College in 1943. He enlisted in the U.S. military that year, soon before turning 18, but World War II stopped his education. Aspiring to be a pilot in the Navy. He was found to be colorblind by medical professionals throughout training. Due to his inability to fly, he was recast as a torpedo bomber rear gunner and radioman. Preparing for combat missions, he was stationed in Hawaii in 1945. During the Battle of Okinawa, his unit was deployed to the aircraft carrier USS Bunker Hill. However, an ear infection struck his pilot just before deployment. Their team was grounded because of that minor medical problem. A few days later, kamikaze pilots struck the Bunker Hill. Many of the sailors from Paul's unit were among the hundreds that perished. In all likelihood, he would have been one of them if not for the ear infection. He was awarded decorations for his service, including the World War II Victory Medal and the American Area Campaign Medal. More significantly, though, he had a fresh outlook when he left the Navy. He had a new perspective on life after that near-death encounter. This was his second chance, and he was not going to let it slip. He returned to Kenyon College following the war. He lost interest in economics. He became a member of the theatrical club at Kenyon and appeared in plays such as The Taming of the Shrew, Charlie's Aunt, and in Charlie's Aunt, he played a prominent role. After a catastrophic fire, his portrayal of a guy dressed as a woman brought much-needed humor to the university. His keen sense of humor and innate storytelling ability were demonstrated when he wrote and directed a satirical student musical that made fun of university life. Theater provided him with a sense of purpose despite his academic struggles. In retrospect, his dismissal from Ohio University wasn't the final straw. It helped him move in the right direction. Following his graduation in 1949, Newman's life changed. He was left in control of the family firm after his father died in 1950. The Cleveland location of Newman Stern Sporting Goods. Newman had no enthusiasm for the store, which had been one of the largest in the city since 1915. He ran it for 18 months, feeling stuck in a life he didn't desire. Instead of accepting that world, he later acknowledged that he was fleeing from it. He took a daring step in 1951. After leaving Cleveland, he went to Yale to study drama. He first intended to get a degree in directing since he was still unsure about his acting abilities. After a year at Yale, however, he made a bold decision and relocated to New York City to train at the renowned Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg. The method acting techniques he acquired there would influence his performances for the remainder of his career. In 1953, he got his first major break when he was cast in William Inge's Broadway play Picnic. Director Joshua Logan wasn't certain he was suitable for the starring role of Hal Carter, despite his desire for it. Rather, Newman was chosen to play a supporting role as Alan Seymour. Although it wasn't the role he had hoped for, Picnic's 477 performances and critical acclaim made it a huge success. Additionally, he met Joanne Woodward, a young actress who was an understudy. This encounter would be the start of one of Hollywood's most well-known marriages, even though neither of them realized it at the time. Additionally, Newman prepared for potential leading roles by working as the lead's understudy. Even though he didn't get much attention, Picnic made him known to the industry. His movie debut followed, and it was a complete bust. A role in the epic biblical drama The Silver Chalice was offered to Newman in 1954. Basil, a Greek craftsman sent to make a silver chalice for the Last Supper, was the character he portrayed. It ought to have been a turning point in the movie's career, but it was a complete failure. Critics characterized it as uninteresting and extravagant. Later, Newman claimed that it was the worst movie made in the 1950s. In 1963, when the movie was set to premiere on television, he pulled out a variety commercial in which he apologized for his performance and begged people not to watch it because he was so humiliated. The plan didn't work out. People were intrigued by his apologies, and the broadcast had more views than anticipated. Even so, he was nominated for a Golden Globe for Most Promising Male Newcomer for the film. It was evidence that his ability was recognized even in the face of failure. Talent alone did not propel Paul Newman to stardom. He was unavoidable due to his presence, timing, and good fortune. His breakthrough performance was in the 1956 movie Somebody Up There Likes Me, which nearly starred James Dean. The role of boxer Rocky Graziano was formerly assigned to Dean, but it was left vacant following his terrible automobile accident. Newman intervened and transformed what would have been another boxing biopic into a memorable film. He portrayed Graziano as a guy of contradictions, tough but weak, irate but charming. He proved to Hollywood that he was more than simply a pretty rookie with a performance that seemed genuine. Prior to its time, the film's harsh aesthetic served as an inspiration for later masterpieces like Rocky and Raging Bull. Its cast was full of up-and-coming celebrities. Pierre Angeli portrayed the wife of Graziano. Actors such as Robert Loggia and Steve McQueen also made early debuts in smaller roles. Its effect was increased when the film took home 2 Academy Awards for Best Art Direction and Best Cinematography. It demonstrated that Newman had what it takes to be a leading man, which was more significant. He assumed a part that would make him famous 2 years later, in 1958. A famous drama by Tennessee Williams was adapted into Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Additionally, Brick Pollitt, a former athlete battling alcoholism and personal issues, was portrayed by Newman. His on-screen connection with Elizabeth Taylor made every scene feel electrifying. Deep topics of family dysfunction were tackled in the story. Avarice and suppression of emotions. Newman portrayed Brick with subdued passion, displaying suffering beneath his composed demeanor. Critics commended his ability to give the part dimension, and audiences responded favorably to his performance. He was no longer merely a pretty face, as evidenced by his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. The movie was an enormous hit, receiving 6 nominations for Academy Awards. Despite not taking home any awards, it solidified Newman's status as a major star in Hollywood. The choice to shoot in color also had a surprising consequence. It brought attention to his brilliant blue eyes, making them one of his most talked about characteristics. His appearance became just as legendary as his performances after that. Newman had reached the pinnacle of his career by the early 1960s. He played Fast Eddie Felson in the 1961 film The Hustler, a modest pool hustler with lofty goals. It was a chic, gripping, and morally complex movie. Newman created one of the most iconic anti-heroes in film by combining vulnerability and conceit in the role. Newman was nominated for one of the 9 Academy Awards for the film. In 1963, Hud followed. Hud Bannon, a self-centered rancher at conflicts with his father, was portrayed by Newman in this Western drama. Due to his recklessness and moral failings, Hud was a novel kind of character for Hollywood, in contrast to conventional Western heroes. In addition to earning Newman another nomination for Best Actor, the movie took home 3 Academy Awards. In Cool Hand Luke, he gave another remarkable performance in 1967. He portrayed a disobedient prisoner named Luke Jackson who defies the system. He became a symbol of resistance because of his stubbornness, and his performance made the movie a cultural icon. A single line from the film became iconic. What we have here is a breakdown in communication. Despite coming from Strother Martin's character, Newman was always associated with the quote. His increasing legacy was further enhanced when he was nominated for another Academy Award. His blue eyes continued to be the subject of conversation throughout all of this. Although Newman never let his appearance to define him, they rose to fame alongside his films. At one point, he made a joke about his gravestone saying, "Here lies Paul Newman, who died a failure because his eyes turned brown." However, by that point, he had established a career that extended well beyond his looks. When Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were both understudies for the Broadway production of Picnic, they first crossed paths in 1953. He had 3 kids and was married to Jackie Witt at the time. Gore Vidal and Marlon Brando were among the famous people Woodward was dating. Although their connection was instantaneous, it was first platonic. He was immediately attracted to her, Newman subsequently acknowledged. She was independent and modern, whereas he was more traditional. She was even more intriguing to him because of that difference. Their reunion to co-star over the long, sweltering summer of 1957 marked a turning point in their relationship. At that point, Newman's marriage was failing. He became closer to Woodward, and eventually they were unable to deny their relationship. Newman married Woodward in a ceremony held in Las Vegas in 1958, following the completion of his divorce. Before returning to begin their life together, they took a honeymoon in England. Newman felt bad about the way he handled his divorce, even though they were excited about their new marriage. He then acknowledged that he didn't provide his kids a clear explanation. Nevertheless, his devotion to Woodward was uncontrollable. He once claimed that she had given birth to a sexual being inside him. Their marriage was influenced for the following 50 years by that intensity. Especially in Hollywood, it was no minor accomplishment to be together for 50 years. Although they were much in love, they had difficulties in their marriage. Newman once made a famous remark regarding his dedication to Woodward. "I've got steak at home," he said. "What makes me want to get a hamburger?" It was an expression of his allegiance. The temptations and difficulties they encountered were also alluded to. His struggle with drunkenness was one of them. Another was his son Scott's untimely death in 1978. The family suffered greatly after Scott's drug overdose death. According to Melissa, their daughter, their parents made a concerted effort to be together, even under the most trying circumstances. In order to avoid the demands of Hollywood, Newman and Woodward relocated to Connecticut. Their 3 girls were to have a more sedate life. Woodward was frequently hailed by Newman as the reason he remained grounded. Even though they each had their own occupations, they were always there for one another. One of their relationship's strongest aspects was that balance. They frequently overlapped in their working careers. Together, they produced 16 movies, beginning with The Long Hot Summer in 1958. Mr. and Mrs. Bridge, Boys, Paris Blues, and Rally Round the Flag were among their other films. Rachel was among their most prominent partners. Woodward starred in the 1968 Newman-directed movie Rachel. It won several awards and was praised by critics. They later studied how gamma rays affected the glass menagerie in Man in the Moon Marigolds. Newman directed both. Their films were notable because of their ability to bring out the best in one another. According to Newman, a mix of patience, respect, and lust led to their success. It was a unique combination that sustained their marriage and their career. Despite its imperfections, their love was genuine. Marriage took work, and they were honest about that. "All the misdemeanors, the betrayals, the difficulties have kind of evened themselves out over the years," Newman once stated. Their girls remembered their parents' acrimonious arguments, but they were equally committed to putting things right. According to reports, Woodward thought Newman's well-known hamburger comment made their relationship seem too straightforward, thus he didn't like it. Their marriage also suffered occasionally as a result of his drinking. But perseverance, treatment, and a profound understanding of one another got them through. They also took pleasure in their own passions. Both Woodward and Newman had a passion for charity and were race car drivers and knitters, respectively. There was more to Paul Newman than just his Hollywood fame. No matter the genre, he had a way of making every role seem genuine. He co-starred with Robert Redford in the 1969 film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. As Butch Cassidy, he performed a quick-witted bandit with a polished conversational style. Redford portrayed Sundance, the more subdued but lethal member of the pair. The movie was unforgettable because of their chemistry. It was no ordinary Western. It was witty, and charming. It was adored by audiences. In addition to earning 7 Academy Award nominations, the movie made over $100 million worldwide. Even outlaws might be lovable, as demonstrated by Newman's light-hearted performance, which gave the movie its heart. He reunited with Redford for The Sting in 1973, 4 years later. This time, they weren't Wild West outlaws. They were con artists in Chicago in the 1930s, executing a complex scheme against a vicious mob boss. As an experienced hustler who was well-versed in all the tricks of the trade, Newman portrayed Henry Gondorf. He created a sleek, self-assured, and constantly in control figure. With $156 million in global receipts and the Academy Award for Best Picture, the movie was a huge hit. Redford handled most of the plot, but Newman's performance added nuance and flair. These two movies solidified his reputation in Hollywood and made his collaboration with Redford one of the most recognizable in cinematic history. Newman began demonstrating his ability to play more intricate and nuanced characters by the 1980s. He portrayed Michael Gallagher in Absence of Malice, 1981, a character who was wrongfully charged with murder by a reporter. There was more to the movie than merely a thriller. It looked at the power of misleading information and the risks posed by the media. As a man who was having trouble clearing his name, Newman portrayed Gallagher, adding a subdued intensity to the part. He was nominated for a Best Actor Academy Award for his performance. Then, in 1982, came the verdict. Newman portrayed a corrupt lawyer in need of atonement, Frank Galvin. Galvin has the opportunity to show himself for the first time in years when he takes on a medical malpractice case. Every moment of his suffering felt authentic because to Newman, he displayed the desperation, tenacity, and gradual restoration of Galvin's self-respect. 5 Academy Award nominations were received by the movie, including one for Newman. Even though he lost, his performance was still one of the most impactful of his career. Newman had been nominated for Oscars for years, but he had never taken home the trophy. Despite 7 nominations, he had not won. For his lifetime accomplishments, the Academy awarded him an honorary Oscar in 1986, perhaps assuming he would never win. However, he eventually did the very next year. He returned to the role of Fast Eddie Felson from The Hustler in 1961 in The Color of Money in 1986. Newman ensured Eddie had changed in the 25 years since he initially portrayed the role. Weiser was older now, but he was still eager to try his hand at greatness one final time. He mentored Tom Cruise's character, a budding pool player. However, this was not merely a mentorship story. It was about ambition, pride, and growing old in a world that never stops changing. In 1987, Newman took home the Academy Award for Best Actor. It was a win long overdue. For everything he had contributed to the film industry, not just this part. As he grew older, Newman maintained his talent. He portrayed the grumpy yet endearing handyman Sully Sullivan in the 1994 film Nobody's Fool. Despite Sully's many regrets, Newman offered him warmth and humor, which made him one of his most likable characters. At the age of 69, he was still producing some of his finest work. He received another Academy Award nomination for the performance. His last live-action performance was in the 2002 film Road to Perdition. He portrayed John Rooney this time, an Irish mob boss torn between family and devotion. The central focus of the movie was his connection with his surrogate son, who was portrayed by Tom Hanks. Rooney wasn't your average bad guy. He was a guy caught between duty and affection. With a quiet authority, Newman gave each word a profound sense of meaning. When he received his final Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, he was 77 years old. It was a wonderful way to end a career that had spanned over 50 years. Despite being one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, Paul Newman had a very troubled existence. His struggles as a father, his persistent fight with alcohol, and self-doubt were the driving forces for his accomplishment. The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man, his memoir, showed a side of him that not many were aware of. He had kept it inside for so long that even his closest friends and family were startled. Even though he was a legend, Newman never thought he had real talent. He was feeling like a fake. Convinced that opportunities he didn't deserve were provided to him because of his appearance. He said he was nervous and doubtful, constantly worried that people would see he wasn't as excellent as they believed. He continued to feel as though he didn't belong despite his roles in The Hustler, 1961, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969. These fears had been ingrained in him since his early years. He was treated more like a trophy by his mother than a son, and he was left with unhealed wounds by his alcoholic father. He gained some self-assurance from Joanne Woodward, his second wife. She recognized something in him that he was unable to recognize in himself. Even though she urged him to accept his status as a sex icon, his skeptical thoughts persisted. He was always wondering if his talent was the reason people liked him or if it was just his appearance. In his autobiography, he expressed his desire to dismantle the idealized perception that others held of him. He wanted his true identity to be known to the world. His difficulties went beyond his personal life. He believed he had failed as a father. He acknowledged that he was frequently absent, inconsistent, and irritated despite having 6 children. He felt the brunt of this failure most keenly in 1978. At the age of 28, when his son Scott passed away from a heroin overdose. Newman felt terrible about Scott's hardships. He pondered whether his own achievement had made his son's life more difficult or whether Scott had been under pressure to meet an unachievable level. Newman was irrevocably altered by Scott's death. He was compelled to examine himself in a manner he had never done before. He struggled to express his emotions, though, even after the disaster. Since he never talked about it, his daughters subsequently acknowledged that they were unaware of the depth of the sorrow Dad bore. He concentrated on taking action instead. To educate youth against drug usage, he established the Scott Newman Center in 1980. The remorse that accompanied him for the rest of his life was never eliminated, but it was his method of transforming his loss into something worthwhile. He also battled alcoholism for many years. Newman identified as a functioning drunk. He managed to work despite drinking excessively, but by the 1970s, it was seriously straining his marriage. Woodward had enough at last. A deal was struck. Despite giving up hard liquor, he continued to drink beer, occasionally consuming an entire case at dinner. His personal life was not the only thing impacted by his drinking. It influenced some of his best-known performances. In 1982, he portrayed an alcoholic lawyer on the quest for atonement in The Verdict. The part was personal to me. He experienced many of the same difficulties as his character. Even earlier movies, such as Buffalo Bill and the Indians, 1976, depicted his relationship with alcohol in real life. In spite of everything, Newman managed to get back in control. It was unexpectedly through racing rather than acting. While filming Winning, a movie about an experienced racer vying for victory at the Indianapolis 500, he began his adventure in 1969. He practiced in Lime Rock Park in Connecticut because, at 43, he wanted his performance to seem genuine. Quickly, what started off as preparation grew into much more. Real racing superstars Bobby Unser and Dan Gurney were featured in the movie. And Newman discovered that their world captivated him. He purchased a Datsun 510 when filming was finished and began practicing alone. Initially, it was merely a pastime. After that, he participated in his first professional race in 1972. While most racers retire in their 40s, Newman was only beginning his career. His approach to racing was as disciplined as his approach to acting. His notoriety did not open doors for him. From minor contests in the Sports Car Club of America, he rose through the ranks, demonstrating his genuine driving prowess. He developed into one of the nation's top amateur racers over time. He had won 7 SCCA national championships by the late 1970s. He was more than just a car enthusiast and performer. His rivalry was fierce. Then, at the age of 54, Newman achieved one of the most remarkable endurance racing feats in 1979. In one of the world's most difficult races, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, he participated. Alongside professional drivers Dick Barber and Rolf Stommelen, he drove a Porsche 935. Despite the car's formidable 700 horsepower, the race was cruel. A torrential downpour transformed the course into a slippery battleground. Newman's squad persevered, although many others found it difficult to keep up. After completing 299 laps, they placed first in their class and second overall. Given that he began racing at such a late age, it was an impressive accomplishment. In the world of motorsport, his performance attracted attention. Officially, he had demonstrated his abilities on the biggest platform. Not only was Newman an excellent driver, he was also skilled at assembling a successful squad. He founded Newman Haas Racing in 1983 with Carl Haas. It soon rose to become one of the most successful teams in IndyCar history. They had a breakthrough first season. Mario Andretti's victory in the 1984 kart championship demonstrated the team's competitiveness. When they signed Nigel Mansell, the current Formula One champion, in 1993, they created even another milestone. In his debut season, Mansell achieved a feat no other driver had ever accomplished. He won the IndyCar championship. Newman Haas Racing won 108 races and 8 championships in almost 30 years. Newman continued to act even as his racing career flourished. His last significant motion picture assignment was voicing Doc Hudson in Pixar's Cars in 2006. It was an ideal fit for the character, a retired race car with a famous past. Newman's own racing background was mirrored in the part, and the 1951 Hudson Hornet that served as Doc's inspiration was renowned for its domination in early NASCAR. In addition to the racing link, he enjoyed working on the project because of Pixar's narrative. With $462 million made globally, the movie became one of the year's biggest hits. Although Newman stopped performing in 2007, archival recordings of his voice appeared in Cars 3, 2017. His health was failing by then. As you age, you begin to lose your memory, he acknowledged candidly. You begin to lose your creativity and your self-assurance. But his passion remained unwavering. Hollywood star Paul Newman was more than that. He was a man who bore both grief and victory, transforming his hardships into something more. He was 83 when he died on September 26, 2008. He died of lung cancer, but he was at home in Westport, Connecticut, with his wife, Joanne Woodward, holding him as he breathed his last. While his name will always be associated with iconic movies like Cool Hand Luke and The Hustler, his impact went beyond the big screen. He never sought recognition, in contrast to many actors. He preferred purpose and family to fame. He was married to Joanne Woodward for 50 years. A rare Hollywood love story. Together, they brought up Nell, Melissa, and Claire, their 3 daughters. Jacqueline Witt, Newman's first wife, had 3 children as well. His life wasn't painless. Scott, his son, overdosed on drugs and died in 1978. The bereavement broke him. He held himself responsible and questioned whether he could have done more. Nevertheless, he chose to act on his grief rather than wallow in it. In order to assist others in battling substance misuse, he founded the Scott Newman Center. Although he didn't talk much about his suffering, his actions betrayed his genuine concern. Newman gave up acting in 2007. Despite his deteriorating health, he refused to accept pity. Humorously dispelled speculations that circulated regarding his sickness, claiming he was simply receiving treatment for hair loss and athlete's foot. His spirit was strong despite his body's weakness. His daughters have shown aspects of his true self. One of his daughters, Melissa, described his struggles with self-worth in his memoir. He hardly discussed the ways in which his early years influenced him. He had a demanding and aloof father. He was smothered with love by his mother, to the point of discomforting him. Even if these early injuries had an impact, Newman managed to go on. According to Clea, another of his daughters, he found genuine joy in serving people. She is currently employed by the Serious Fun Children's Network, a global network of camps for kids with life-threatening conditions. When she visits, she frequently senses her father's presence since she knows that his work continues to transform lives. One of his most notable accomplishments was co-founding the food firm Newman's Own with novelist A in 1982. Ho-a-ner. A basic Christmas present was the beginning of it all. Newman delivered bottles of his homemade salad dressing to his acquaintances. He chose to sell it because of the overwhelmingly positive feedback. In order to start the business, he and Hockner contributed $20,000. However, Newman never considered this to be about profit. Every single cent of profit would be donated to a non-profit. From salad dressing to frozen pizza, popcorn, spaghetti sauce, lemonade, and even wine, the company expanded. However, it was more than just delicious meals. Since February, Newman has humored the brand by creating catchy phrases like fine foods. People adored the purpose as much as the items. More than $600 million has been donated to charities by Newman's Own by 2022. His daughter Clea now supports the camps run by Serious Fun Children's Network, which received one of its largest donations. The business also provided funding for community projects in Kenya and assistance to military families through the Fisher House Foundation. Up to the final 2 years of his life, Newman personally oversaw the gifts. In order to ensure the continuation of his work, he established his own foundation, which is still in operation today. His idea demonstrated that companies were capable of more than just making money. It might change something.